Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is part 2 of our Loki Episode 3 open spoiler discussion. Now, of course, we had the open spoiler discussion yesterday. That was Wednesday. However, we didn't have enough time to get through all of the observations, comments, and questions that got sent in. We ran out of time, but we're going to get caught up on those and answer the rest of those questions that are here now in part 2. Now, again, just a little bit of a disclaimer. If you have not seen Loki Episode 3, you may want to pass by this video, come back to it later, because we are talking in an open spoiler discussion. All right. Odds are most of you watching this video have already seen part 1. So let's get into it. Now, before we dive into those questions, there's a couple of things I want to recap. Number one, I think personally, out of all 18 episodes of MCU Disney Plus shows that we've had so far, I think it was 9 for WandaVision, 6 for Falcon the Winter Soldier, and now the 3 that we've had for Loki. Out of all 18 episodes, I think Loki Episode 3 has been the weakest by a significant amount. I think the weakest episode that we've had. I didn't hate the episode, did not hate it. But to me, it basically just sums up in this. If you just told somebody that, hey, it gets revealed in this episode that the agents of the TVA are not created by the Timekeepers, they're variants themselves. Once you tell somebody that, they can just skip episode 3 and they're not going to miss a thing. That to me is, there's no character development. The narrative doesn't progress. Just one significant piece of information is given, and it is significant. It's a very, very important piece of information. But the thing is, that piece of information wasn't even revealed as a part of the flow of the story. It was an offhanded remark made as two characters were walking away. It's like, this is a pretty big deal, at any rate. So I'm not a big fan of the episode, but it just makes me more excited for episode 4. That being said, one of the big lingering questions that kind of is still there after episode 3 is, who or what is Sylvie? Now, I'm going to guess that this will come up a number of times as we look at the remaining questions. So why don't we just address this here so we can refer back to it, okay? So who or what is Sylvie? All right, so here's what I'm thinking. In the who or what is Sylvie, there are 3 options. Number 1, she is indeed a legit Loki, right? So that's one option. That they've been alluding to it. She has never come right out and said, I am Loki of Asgard, princess to that. I mean, but they've implied it. They have implied it. I mean, now she's got the little 2-horned thing. One's broken off, but they have implied it. She's not come outright explicit, blah, but it has been implied, right? And so you can't ignore that. But there's also been some things she said and some ways that the dialogue has been structured that makes me wonder, is she actually a Loki? Like when the conversation of the mother comes up and they're kind of vague of it, she just say, yeah, my mother, Frigga. It's like, whoa, time out. Like, you know what I mean? She didn't say that. She said my mother, but not a lot else. Anyway, there's that. The second option is that she is not a legit Loki. I think this is a possibility. Now, I have not come down, just so you know, I have not come down firmly on any of these 3 things we're going to mention here. But again, while there has been a number of times that it has been implied, sometimes strongly implied, that she is indeed a legit Loki copy, or a variant, as you will, I've also believed there have been sometimes little things that have been dropped that still make me wonder. Again, I'm not saying I'm coming down on any one of these three things. Now, the third option is a bit of a cheat, but she is a Loki, but not in the true sense. Like, as we looked at the other Loki variants that Mobius was showing, like, obviously that's Loki, and that's Loki, and that's Loki, and that's Loki in a Tour de France outfit, and that's Loki with giant Hulk-like muscles, but it's all been Loki. And here's the interesting thing. There was a featurette, since we did part 1 of the spoiler discussion, there was a featurette of Loki that came out that talks to some of those show creators and shows a little bit of footage, like Sylvie as a little girl, not a little boy, as a little girl. And one of the things that one of the creators says is, she's not Loki, she's Sylvie. But that could just mean the way Sylvie says it, don't call me that anymore. Now I am, you know what I mean? So again, it's a little vague. I feel like they're keeping a little vague. But so it is possible that she was born and called Loki, but she's a completely different character. Like a totally different character and not that. So those are the three like options I see are on the table. I'm not personally 100% convinced of any of them. There has been strongly implied things that she is indeed a Loki variant. I believe there's been some, cloudiness thrown on that by some other things said in the show that makes me doubt it a little bit. There is the third option that sure, she's called Loki, but really she's fundamentally a completely different character. So I don't know. I need to know more. We'll find out as the episodes progress on. So with that said, let's actually get over to it and start picking up and getting caught up on the questions that came in during the live stream. So let's get to it right now. We're going to start getting caught up here with, wrong one. We're going to start getting caught up here with Juno Faulkner, who writes, I wonder if the dialogue between Loki and Mobius is a good amount ad lib, but the Loki and Sylvie dialogue sticks more closely to the script. Good question. I don't know. Again, one of the big strengths of this show to me has been the dialogue, particularly the dialogue between Mobius and Loki. And I thought one of the worst things of this new episode was the dialogue between Loki and Sylvie. It's like as they're running through the minefield, the comets are falling. It's almost like they pulled a Step Brothers line. Did we just become best friends? Yep. And blah, blah, blah. I was just expecting them now to chop up watermelons with swords at that point. I thought the dialogue was extremely lame. I really do. So I don't know, maybe one of the explanations, Juno, is that one was ad-libbed, one was not, but I think it was all scripted, which just adds to the confusion for me. Anyway, good thought, though. All right, next up, I keep pressing the wrong button. Next thought, we got Ricardo Santiago writes. No, it's the other one. Ricardo Santiago writes, did anybody notice that Lady Loki, or whatever she is, had 2 horns on her crown, but in episode 3, she only had 1 horn left on her crown? I was wondering about that. I wonder if it looked like she had 2 horns, because it still has 2 horns, just one is broken. So maybe it looked like it had, or maybe it just got broke. I don't really know. I mean, that's not a bad question. But I got a feeling it was probably broke all along, but you might be right. I might have to go back and look at that, Ricardo. Thanks for putting that in there. All right. Next up, Michael Bradley writes, hello, John. While I liked this episode, it was a step down from the previous episodes. I completely agree. It did just enough to keep me interested. I mean, like I said, I think this is the weakest of the MCU Disney Plus episodes so far, but I did not hate it. Like, it didn't make me lose interest in Loki. I just thought it was the least good of everything that they've done. And if anything else, it's only made me more excited to see a good episode again next week in 4, fingers crossed. All right, next up, KM Reviews writes, Part 1. I still think everything after Loki being touched is him being enchanted like the girl at the beginning. Lots of hints to it throughout. Okay, I have a big reason why I don't agree with you, but we'll get to that in a second. Part 2. She said it depends on the mind. Stronger minds are tricky. That she is there with them. I think this whole episode is her possessing him. I think she lied about having to be a memory. Loki would have picked up on that. So she's giving him an illusion of fighting for survival. I think the next episode he will notice it's not real and snap out of her enchantment and see she's been using him the whole time. All right. I like the way you're thinking. But let me tell you why I don't agree. And you might be right. We might get in episode 4 and find out you're right. But here's why, at least for now, I disagree. She put that TVA agent under that spell because there was specific information she wanted from her. How do I recognize the elevators? How many people are guarding the timekeepers, right? All that kind of stuff. I don't think there's anything in particular. I mean, you could say the Temp Pad, but even at that point, she could just completely search him and find. I don't know. See, to me, I actually think it's reverse, KM. I think Loki lied to her, pretending that he didn't know how to do the enchantment. And I think from that moment, because remember they're on the train and they do a hard edit cut, and all of a sudden she's sleeping on the table and wakes up and there's Loki singing a song. When she sings, come home. When she sings, come home. Remember, yeah, right? I think that's Loki enchanted her. Maybe. I'm not 100% on that. I'm not even 50% on that. But I think there is a possibility that that was Loki enchanting her. And the whole thing, like when the episode ends, it's like this planet's about to be destroyed and they're about to die. I think they're not, because it's not actually happening. I think they're still on the train. Let me rephrase. I think there is a possibility they're still on the train and Sylvie is under a Loki enchantment. So I don't know. You could be right. I could be right. Odds are it's probably something else entirely, but we will find out. All right. Thanks for sharing that, KM. Next up, Donald Thomas writes, "Hey, John, this was my favorite episode. My least favorite episode, but I'm glad you liked it, brother. This was my favorite episode because I think the cheesy dialogue was intentional. Lady Loki is still asleep on the train. It's a Loki. I was just saying that. If it turns out to be that, Donald, it is still not my favorite episode. I still think it's my least favorite episode, not only of Loki, but of all the MCU shows. But I am in agreement with you. I think there's this possibility here. She's still asleep on that train. We'll find out. All right. Rich Retro writes, now that we know the TVA had past lives, we're going to find out Mobius was a jet ski salesman, or certainly owned a cottage with his family that he loved riding jet skis with. And by the way, let's keep this in mind. Just because Sylvie says that the TVA agents are variants like the rest of them, that doesn't necessarily mean that's true. It probably is. All I am saying is just because Sylvie said that does not necessarily mean that is the truth. Probably is, but let's just keep that one little possibility in mind. That's all I'm saying. All right, next up, Dave Atkins writes, "Silly theory, but apart from the Bifrost, assuming Heimdall is alive," well, remember it's 2077, so this is after the events of Endgame, so Heimdall should still be dead, theoretically. Anyway, assuming Heimdall is alive, either Ravagers or Nova Corps save them via a distress call / bounty from the TVA put out on Loki and the variant. Well, that seems hyper unlikely, Dave, because by the TVA engaging, like, say, Nova Corps wouldn't be doing bounties, or the Ravagers who would do bounties, that is only exasperating and creating what am I looking for? An inconsistency in the timeline and creating a massive set of variants. So I don't think so. If they are actually on that planet, and if that's all actually happening, it's not just a Loki enchantment on Sylvie, I think there is a possibility that just before the planet blows up, Mobius, who now knows about the idea that they're hiding in apocalypses, he may deduce and figure out where they are and actually go there and save them. But I don't think you're going to see the TVA employing, because they're like, we're putting out a bounty. Meanwhile, no one's ever heard of the TVA. The Ravagers don't know who the TVA is, or know that they have money, or anything like that, right? Plus, by doing that, they'd be creating like 100 new variants. So I doubt it's going to be that. I mean, I like that you're thinking outside the box, and who knows, maybe it'll turn out you're right. But those are the reasons why I don't think I agree, but we'll see. All right, Power is Power writes, "Third option, Mobius rescue. Make a small divergence. Even one escape ship or survivor is enough. Mobius already knows to look at apocalypses." Well, listen, if Sylvie and Loki get off world, then that doesn't create new variances, because they're not supposed to be there in the first place, right? They're not supposed to be there in the first place. So if Mobius does rescue them, which is what I was just talking about, then it doesn't create another divergence. It actually keeps everything clean, because they're not supposed to be there anyway. So that's my thought. All right, let's move on. Next up, we've got Lord Genome 76 who writes, "Do you think Loki is really gay?" I mean, I've always thought there was a possibility of that, but this episode seemed to set it straight that he's bisexual, which is consistent with the Norse mythology and other things. But I always thought there might be a chance of that, but it seems like the answer is that he's bisexual. All right, next up, Bianca Tillman writes, Just like how Sylvie was enchanting the TVA agent in the beginning, I think this whole episode was Loki enchanting Sylvie. So I'm not the only one thinking this. That Loki was enchanting Sylvie. They didn't leave the TVA. Well, see, I think if Loki is enchanting her, I think her waking up on the train. So I think they got on that train. And at some point, Loki enchanted her. Hence, she thought she fell asleep. And she pops her head up on the table. That might all be in the enchantment. Now, again, it's probably not at all, but I'm thinking there's a possibility of that, Bianca. So you and I are thinking along the same lines. All right, Crashing Coyote writes, who do you think Richard E. Grant is playing? Not a single clue. Not the slightest clue at this point. And at this point, I don't think he's showing up to the final episode. No insider information there. That's just me guessing. All right, and this may be a hot take, but I think Superman and Lois last night was better than Loki, but still enjoyed both. Well, there wasn't a Superman and Lois the night before this. Anyway, if you're talking about episode 10, the finale, there wasn't an episode 11, was there? Maybe there was. I'm not aware of that. Anyway, I thought episode 10 was the final Superman and Lois. Look, all I say is that I think Loki episode 3 has been the weakest episode of Disney Plus so far. I think it's been the weakest episode of Disney Plus so far. So there's that. All right, CG Nightwalker writes, what if Mobius is an Owen Wilson variant from the 90s? Like literally an Owen Wilson variant. That would be kind of funny. I don't think they'll do that, but that would be funny. Aaron Tapaccio writes, I like the episode. It feels like there's a lot of hints or hidden messages in that episode, like she explains how Sylvie's magic works. That's the thing, though. They didn't explain how it worked. It was still like, I heard her talking about it. We still don't really know how it works. And if your whole episode is just all hints and maybes, I mean, that's maybe it was interesting. Again, I'm glad you liked it. I'm not going to try to talk you out of liking it. If you liked it, that's awesome. I'm not going to try to steal your joy. But I mean, it didn't work for me. Did not work for me. All right, next up. Teddy Holiday writes, watch again, guys. Sylvie confirmed she was Loki. Again, it was ambiguous. Right? It was ambiguous. And it was interpretive. Again, I agree. There are several times in several episodes that it is implied, sometimes heavily implied, that she is indeed a Loki. That's what they're going with in the show right now. But there's also other things that hint or suggest something else. Again, I'm not saying I'm buying that she is Loki. I'm not saying I'm buying that she's not Loki. I'm saying I think it's still, they've been vague and muddy. And yeah, again, if she had simply said like, I am Loki of Asgard, princess to that of like, but we haven't had anything really clear. And yes, there have been moments of implied and even heavily implied that she is that, but there's also been moments you can't ignore that kind of make you go, well, wait a minute, that doesn't quite. All I'm saying is she probably is, but I'm not convinced yet. I'm just not convinced yet. Well, I'm sure after episode 4 I will be, but for now I'm still not completely convinced. All right, next up. Powers Power writes, interesting point that Loki may not tell Mobius. My first thought is, where would he go? His timeline branch is gone. But yeah, here's the thing. So what Powers talking about when I said interesting idea that Loki may not tell Mobius? In the previous spoiler discussion, we talked about, somebody asked the question is, man, I can't wait to see that scene when Mobius finds out he's a variant. And I said, that'll probably happen. And I can't wait for that scene either. But there might also be a possibility that Loki chooses not to tell Mobius. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but it would also be an interesting thing because you're right, he doesn't have a timeline to go back to. And what if Loki just sees Mobius and he's happy, he's content, he likes his life? There might be an interesting scene where Loki has to decide, do I destroy that and take that from him? Or do I let him continue to live in a lie? And that could be interesting. I don't know what they're going to do, but I think it could be interesting. All right. Sam Fisher writes, one of two. I'm not really a guy who develops theories. I find I kind of adopt others. So I wasn't really oh boy, Sam, proofread, buddy. Okay, let me try this again. I'm not really a guy who develops theories. I find I kind of adopts others. So I wasn't really how they get off the planet, only that I know that they get off the planet. And if I had to theorize, I say Mobius finds them by tracking the Temp Pad because everybody is going to the places that got bombed. They didn't. Well, number one, obviously, they get off the planet. We're not going to start episode 4 with Loki and Sylvie die on that planet. Yeah, that's obviously not. So they're going to clearly get off it. So you're right there. And I also kind of agree. I think one of the strong possibilities is that Mobius, I think, to me right now, the two main possibilities, and I could be wrong about both, these are just guesses. The two main possibilities of Loki and Sylvie getting off-world are either A, Mobius shows up, or B, that it was all an illusion and they're still on the train and they still have plenty of time to get off world. So those are my two main theories. Look, there's a good chance it could be a million other things, obviously, but those are the two that I'm kind of leaning on right now. All right, thanks for that, Sam. Next up, Mukbang Reviews writes, you received 2 advanced episodes. Yes, so I got... Disney, much like most Disney Plus series, Disney sent me the first 2 episodes a few weeks in advance so I could watch the first 2 episodes. You received 2 advanced episodes, but broadcast weekly as new episodes are released. Yes. Good business sense, par usual. But could you do these shows if all episodes were released to you prior? Probably not. Probably not. I obviously couldn't do the pregame shows. That's obvious. But I don't think I could do the spoiler discussions either, because if part of the fun of doing these spoiler discussions is that together we also get to speculate about what something that happened in this episode, what did that mean? And if I've already seen all the episodes, I couldn't really participate in those conversations, and therefore there's really no point in doing the videos. So what would probably happen if Disney released all the episodes to me at once? I would probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 days after the series ended, I would do like one big Loki season 1 open spoiler discussion. But frankly, I have a lot more fun doing it this way. That's a good question, Mukbang. Thanks for asking. All right, next up, Daniel Hernandez writes, I hope Sylvie isn't the MCU's main enchantress, as Amora is one of my favorites and deserves to be in a Thor movie. Well, I mean... This is a bigger question because I don't think any character deserves anything. I mean, that's just, and I used to feel like you know, so-and-so deserves a movie. So-and-so deserves a movie. I used to be like that too. Not terribly long ago either. I've come to the realization no character deserves anything. You know, studios and filmmakers should make the stories they want to tell. And that involves one of those characters, great. And if it doesn't, oh well, but no character deserves anything. At least that's kind of my philosophy on it. I didn't always feel that way. I do kind of feel that way now. But yeah, absolutely. If they decide to make one about that because they think they have a great story to tell and that it'll fit in with the rest of the MCU the way they want it to fit, then awesome. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. Like I said, I'm over the whole they deserve to be in there. But that's just me. That's just me. I know a lot of other people, Daniel, feel like you do though. So, and I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong or the reverse. I just our different points of view on that. All right. GC Nightwalker writes, since the visuals are so good, could it be they just wanted to show this planet maybe for a future thing and they were like, yeah, F it? I don't know. I doubt it. I mean, I suppose that's a possibility, but I think this was just a set piece for them and they wanted it to look good and it looked beautiful. It did. All my other criticisms about the episode, I have a few very good things about the episode, and that was one of them. All right. Unjustified Gaming Rights, Part 1. I don't know. I too thought this was, part 1 of I don't know how many. All right. I too thought this was a lackluster episode in terms of story development. Although Sylvie did confirm being a Loki. Again, to me, it was heavily implied. I would not call it stone cold confirmed. That's just me. She stated Sylvie was an alias, Again, you got to go back and listen to the actual language. Again, most likely that is the case. Most likely that is the case. But you can't then just ignore all the other things that kind of make it seem murky. That's all I'm saying. All right. Alias says she created, that she changed her name a long time ago. Maybe a misdirect, but we'll see. We will see. They'll answer the question in concrete, and when that happens, then we'll know. I think he faked the temp pad breaking. I completely agree. Was it just 2? That was just 2. You think he faked the temp pad breaking? I am in 1,000% agreement with you. I'm in 1,000% agreement with you. Whether Mobius shows up to save them or not, I think he still has a very functioning temp pad. And again, I don't know, but it would be a very, very Loki thing to do. At least that's how it strikes me. So we'll see. All right. Next up, we've got John Brady, who writes, "Fellow John, do you think part of the reason for your dislike of the episode is partially due to the expectations you had for it the past couple of days?" No, absolutely not. Now, one of the things I have a lot of vices as a fan, but one of the things I am very good as a fan is taking whatever expectations, thoughts, theories I have and leaving it at the door, and then just watching a movie or an episode and judging it on its own merits. Just judging it on its own merits. Because, I've been affected in the past by that, like 20 years ago with the Star Wars prequels. But I have learned my lesson about that. So no, I don't think my expectations played anything. And here's the other thing I would caution you about, John, is that resist the temptation to find excuses for other people's opinions, right? You just got to accept that I watched that episode and I thought it was a very poor episode. I had high expectations for episode 2 and I loved it. I had high expectations for episode 3 and I thought it was bad. So, I mean, no, but again, what a lot of us fans do, and I've done it and all of you have done it, we've all done this, but we got to keep our guard up for it, is that when somebody doesn't like something that we like, or when somebody likes something that we dislike, instead of just going, okay, yeah, they watched it and it didn't work for them, or they watched it and they found something that worked for them in it that I didn't find. What we as fans sometimes do is try to come up with excuses. It's like, wait a minute, I liked it and they didn't. Well, clearly there's a problem. Yeah, it can't be that they just had a different opinion of it. There must be a reason. Oh, you know what the reason is? They had too high expectations. That's right. So see, it's their fault. It's their fault that they don't like what I like, because no, it's just that I watched the episode. I left all my expectations at the door and I thought it was a poor episode. No character development, no narrative progression. There was one main thing. You literally could tell somebody one line from this episode and then they wouldn't have to watch the episode at all. You literally could have just gone from episode 2 to 4 and you won't be lost at all. And that's not good, in my opinion, when all you have is 6 episodes. But anyway, again, and I'm not trying to discredit the fact that it appears that maybe you liked it. If you liked it, that's great. I love that you liked it. But I didn't like it because I thought it was poor, not because I had high expectations. All right, next up. A-Train A writes, "Sylvie kills a couple of agents and you say she's evil. But Loki can try to kill off an entire race of frost giants, murder hundreds of New Yorkers." Yeah, but you're comparing those like those are apples to apples situations. In actuality, you just proved my point. Listen, the thing with Jotunheim and the frost giants and all that kind of stuff, those were, like, remember Thor and Loki, they grew up seeing them as the bitter enemy. The Frost Giants wants to kill Asgardians. Asgardians want to kill Frost Giants. They have gone to war. There is a very fragile peace that's being taken. Not to mention, he finds out about his heritage. That's going to add fuel to the fire. All that kind of stuff. And as far as the New York thing, yeah, and what has it taken? It has taken us 10 years. It's taken us, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to have an evolution in Loki. to understand who and what he was and what was driving all that and what was motivating that. And then him developing a sense of awareness and him coming to understand himself better. And it's been a years long process. It's been a years long process. Whereas this Sylvie, we see her literally there are many ways she could steal charges. She literally lures these Minutemen into situations just so she can murder them. And not just murder them, but like with those agents at the end of episode 1, they were lured into an oil-soaked field and then burned alive. With the episode ends with them in slow motion screaming in agony in the night sky as their life was slowly slipping away because they were being burned to death. And then instead of 5 years later, after a bunch of character development, we cut to just Sylvie, and her and Loki are now best friends. Again, I'm just saying I found it a bit jarring. That's all I'm saying. I don't need you to agree with me. I'm just saying I found that a bit jarring. That we've gone from this person who has systematically been a serial killer, murdering all these agents, and sometimes in unnecessarily horrific, painful ways, when she never needed to in the first place. And all of a sudden, she's just this misunderstood girl. I just found it a little jarring. That's all. And maybe more information will come out in episodes 4, 5, and 6 that will give more context to everything that has happened, and maybe we'll feel differently, or I'll feel differently later. I'm totally open to that. But yeah, right now it just felt a little bit jarring. That's all. All right, next up. Danny writes, I'm all for representation, but the way it was done on this episode was eye-rolling and forced. Thoughts? Love everything you do, John. Keep up the great work. Well, I appreciate that, Danny, but are you talking about the revelation that's something we all should have known anyway, that Loki is bisexual? The way they did it was eye-rolling and forced? Okay, Danny, my film-loving brother, let me take you to task on this for a second. There is literally 5 words, a casually spoken 5 words in the midst of a conversation, and you're saying it was eye-rolling and forced? How more subtle could it have been? Like, she says to him, like, I don't know, like, do you, like, as a Loki, you're a prince. Is there some lucky princess or other prince? And he says, wait a minute, let me make sure. 5 words. I suppose a bit of, 6 words, both. Isn't that what he said? I suppose a bit of both. And then they moved the conversation on. How subtle do you need it to be? Like, I get it. If Loki and Sylvie were running across the open plain as meteors were falling, and all of a sudden out of nowhere he just says, hey, by the way, just so you know, I really like guys and women. I'm into both. I'm bisexual, and I'm proud of that, and I don't have any embarrassment of that. And you know, on Asgard, we've been more enlightened about things like that for thousands of years. So if you're going to judge me, don't you judge me. Blah, okay, now let's dive for cover. Woo! Okay, then I would have said, well, that was rather forced and eye-rolling. But if it's going to be dropped subtly, I don't know how the fuck you do it more subtly than during a quick line in a conversation of blah, blah, I suppose a bit of both. And then they move on to something else. So, Danny, Mike, I would have to ask you, if they wanted to answer the question about Loki's sexuality, how the fuck more subtle how would you have written it? What could they have done? Unless you're one of these people who thinks, unless you're a straight heterosexual like me, you need to keep that shit hidden. And I'm not saying you are one of those. I'm not saying you are one of those, but I'm saying if you're not one of those, if those 5 quick words, 6, if those 6 quick words spoken very casually in a quick conversation, and then they moved on from it immediately, if you consider that forced and eye-rolling, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you at that point. I really don't. If that's forced and eye-rolling, man, I just don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say. But anyway, I'm a little bewildered, my brother. I'm a little bewildered, but I don't know. Maybe you meant to say it differently and I'm just not or maybe because you don't specify the scene you're talking about. Maybe we're not even talking about Loki's sexuality. Maybe we're talking about something completely different. And I'm just misinterpreting your message. That could totally be. That could totally be the situation. I'm not sure, but maybe it is. Anyway, either way, thanks for writing that. And if I'm misinterpreting you, that's on me. I apologize. I'm just doing the best I can with what I've got here. All right, thanks for writing in, man. All right, now the final thing of the day comes to us from Tim Platt, who writes, just giving you a heads up that there was a jump after my first question at the beginning of the video. Oh, I probably missed that. Some questions got skipped. My first question ended with calling an episode a waste of time. I mean, it might have happened. I was having a really, really hard time, and it usually doesn't do this, but Stream Elements, which is the website that collects all the incoming questions and then puts them up in an order for me. It's not supposed to do this, and it normally doesn't do it, but once in a while, it'll start jumping all over the place, which makes it incredibly frustrating for me. And sometimes it leads me to missing a question or two. And Tim, if I did miss one of yours as a result of that, or if there were anybody else's, I apologize for that profusely. You know what I should have done, honestly? What I should have done, and I was just being stubborn. What I should have done when I noticed the questions started jumping and skipping and I was constantly scrolling to try to find the place that we last were, and I thought I did it successfully, but apparently I didn't. What I should have done is just ended the live stream right there. I simply should have said, guys, you know what? Thanks for tuning in, but this is going to get too complicated. It's a pain in the ass for me trying to run it, and it's clearly must be a pain in the ass for you guys to see us having to pause every time so I can re-scroll through the list to try to find the questions. What I should have done was said, we're going to stop the live stream, and then I should have just taken all the questions, copy and pasted it into a document like we do here. Like when we do this, that's all I'm doing. I'm copying and pasting questions and then pasting them into a document so they don't jump around. I don't read them in advance. I know, like, I do have some moderators that will look at them sometimes, but I just copy, paste it in, good to go. And that's what I should have done. But I think I was just too proud to go. And you know, honestly, it's embarrassing when you're doing a live stream and you tell everybody, hey, everybody come to the live stream. And I think at the time we had like, you know, almost 1,500 people in the live stream at the time. And then say, hey, thanks for coming, everybody. I just wasted your time. Bye. And I got stubborn and I tried just to force my way through it. And it appears that as a result, I might have missed a couple of questions. And for that, I am so sorry. I hate that. And all I can do is offer my real big apologies. So I'll try to figure out a way to make sure that doesn't happen again. But thank you for making me aware of that, dude. All right, guys. And that'll do it. We are now all caught up on all of your observations, thoughts, questions, and theories that came in during our open spoiler discussion. Now, of course, we look forward to episode 4, which I am highly anticipating because I know it's going to be loads better than episode 3 was. We will, of course, do our pregame show on Tuesday, a few hours before the show goes on, before Loki episode 4 comes out. And then, of course, we will do our episode 4 open spoiler discussion on Wednesday. And I hope you guys will join me for that. And with that all said, guys, thank you for taking some time out to spend some time here and watch this video with us. And a special thank you to all you guys who sent in those comments, questions, and observations. Because number one, you have us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported our channel while you did it. And all of us involved here with the John Campea Show, thank you guys very, very much for that support. Okay, guys, that'll do it for me for now. My name's John Campea. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.